Welcome to Healthy Planet, a show for people who care about their health and the health of our planet on the ThinkTech live streaming network series. I'm your host, Dr. Grace O'Neil. Joining me today is Brody McMurty from Johnson Controls and Greg Robison, also from Johnson Controls, a sustainable infrastructure company. Welcome, Brody and Greg. So let's talk about sustainable infrastructure. Who wants to go first?
Sure, I'm glad.
What it means, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad to start it off. So, in my world, that really means reducing the amount of carbon that our buildings use, and that's really connected to both water and energy. And energy and water are connected. So, it takes a lot of energy to pump water. So, a lot of what the projects that I'm involved with and that we develop in Hawaii have to do with first reducing as much as possible. And then also my particular area of expertise is in solar photovoltaics with battery storage. And so, yeah, that creates a healthy building. There's lots of other aspects of healthy buildings, of course, air quality and other things. But my area of focus is in how the building interacts with both the utility grid, but also the planet in terms of what amount of carbon and greenhouse gas emissions is being used to keep a building on.
And how about you, Greg? What does sustainable infrastructure mean to you?
Well, I really resonate with the term sustainable. I've been into it for decades, and therefore, the purpose of our company is something I can really get behind. So my role is to implement the designs that our engineers develop and actually get them installed, ordering equipment, installing equipment, testing and verification of the equipment so that it all works to its design, and that we verify that the product that was delivered was the product that was intended, or solutions can be used in exchange for the word product.
So are there any websites that we can look at if we are interested in sustainable infrastructure projects in Honolulu specifically?
Sure. Yeah, sustainablehonolulu.com. And that really shows off the work of the city and county of Honolulu that Greg and I have been involved in. The way I talk about it is I think about, one of the best things about being in Hawaii is we're so connected to the water. And so I'm out there surfing, see that oil tanker coming in and it's full of oil, right? It drops off the oil at the harbor but it doesn't leave empty. It leaves full, it drops off all that oil and then we burn it. But it leaves full of cash and jobs. So we put about $6 billion a year into that oil tanker. So I always picture it actually leaving full of our cash and full of jobs. So projects like the City and County of Honolulu project, created over 52 local jobs to build the sustainable infrastructure. And that's a lot of what the work is, which is first reducing. First figuring out what your baseline is, right? Just like at your house, to know where you're going to start. The goal is to get to net zero. Hawaii, we have a law, we have a goal, the 2009 Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative, to be 100% renewable by 2045. But the first thing to do is reduce before you're making and generating energy through solar panels or other means. And that's what's great about what the city and county of Honolulu did, is focus on reducing first and then adding solar PV. So overall, that website has a lot of information about the project. And we can talk in more detail about that if you want.
Yeah, so tell us about which projects that people might recognize around Honolulu that have been worked on by Johnson Controls.
Sure. Yeah, and Johnson Controls is a great umbrella that does a lot of things, and that I get to work under and develop projects for. But specifically focused on sustainable infrastructure. Prior projects are with the University of Hawaii, so Leeward, Windward, Honolulu, and Kapiolani community colleges, also UH Maui College. So UH Maui College was a long process of first reducing energy through more efficient lighting, more efficient air conditioning, and then adding solar photovoltaics, and actually on all those other 4 campuses. So Maui College achieved 100% renewable in 2021, actually about 103%. So actually providing energy to the rest of the grid in addition to what the needs of that campus are. So one of the first in the United States. And that the last piece of that was, my team's involvement. It was really around adding the solar and the energy storage that usually really should be the last piece. If you're thinking about your home or you're thinking about your building, first figure out all the ways you can reduce, and then look at the last solution of actually making your own energy.
So in terms of buildings in general, the architecture, how are the buildings built so that they can be more sustainable? Are there certain things you can do, like maybe a solar light, a solar fan, that kind of thing, when you're building, suppose, like you were saying Maui Community College, were there specific things that the architect or whoever's planning the building, that a civil engineer put in that specific structure that would be different from other structures that were built without the consideration of being sustainable?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, most of the things in a building that use energy are really for human comfort and human use, right? We need lights to be able to see and do our work, and air conditioning to do that comfortably. Air conditioning is probably 40, even up to 50% of a building's energy use. And then lighting and plug load generally comprising the rest of it. So there's ways to address all of that. In air conditioning, it's just more efficient chillers and controls, and especially not having air conditioning on when a building is when no one's not occupied or a space isn't occupied. So technology really is the solution. I mean, there's also human changes, right? Everyone tries to remember to turn off the lights or turn off the AC. But you need to be able to control specific areas in order to allow the humans in the building to make it efficient as possible. So a lot of things that were installed in buildings in the 1970s and 80s are really inefficient. And so there's a lot of carbon reduction that can be unlocked through efficiency first. So that's kind of the mantra in sustainability, is first reduce as much as possible.
So I'm kind of curious, a lot of the buildings, they came with central AC. So are you trying to make a difference so that different rooms have, this just the split AC in the one room if no one's working in the other room? That way you're not using central AC in the whole building. Is that something that companies are looking at doing to save energy?
Absolutely. Well, so it really depends on the building and the building type. But certainly being able to control different zones and areas of a building is a way to reduce. But think about it like you have a chiller, right? Whether it's a split AC or central, it's basically spinning and throwing off heat. It's getting rid of heat and providing cold, chilled water. And then there's a fan, which most people, the thing that you see that's blowing over that chilled water pipe, really no different than a fan blowing over an ice cooler. They're just separated. And so, at the end of the day, there's 2 motors really that are running. One is the chiller that's making the chilled water. That's a lot of energy use. And the other part is the fan.
How about just having people open windows? Is that not permitted in buildings, or why? I'm just thinking about when COVID was a big thing, and just the recirculated air, and how that might not be that healthy for people to breathe air that could be potentially infected, by COVID or whatnot. Is it possible to have more windows like that open? Because a lot of these buildings, I find, they don't have windows that open.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, certainly if you're at your house and you can open the window and turn off the air conditioning completely, that's a great energy conservation measure. There are, building codes around safety and just not wanting anyone to be able to fall out of a window. But one of the interesting things about COVID is it was such a great opportunity to do energy retrofits. Starting with the efficiency measures, which the city and county of Honolulu did, and then adding the renewable generation. The city and county of Honolulu project at sustainablehonolulu.com was really incredible because the city, took the effort to put that RFP out in May 2020, right? So really about 2 months after the complete lockdown that we all experienced. So one of the silver linings was buildings weren't occupied. And the city took the opportunity, and a lot of the people like me who's a project developer, along with Gregory at Johnson Controls and the whole Johnson Controls team and all the subcontractors were at home with everyone else. But then the city released this request for proposals and basically opened up, full mask and everything. But everyone was just so excited to be able to go out of their home and say, "Wow, what a great time to prepare to reopen by making the facilities as efficient as possible." So we were able to go to, there were in that project a total of, I think, over 65 different police stations, fire stations, large city buildings, and start with really the key, which is the baseline, just to get the baseline information, right? So to figure out if you're going to save energy, you got to start with how much are you using now and what's there, what type of lighting technology is there? Is the roof good for solar PV? And so because the buildings weren't occupied, it was a great opportunity to do energy efficiency and renewables. And so that project, Gregory and the JCI team on the efficiency side, able to achieve a 51% reduction across the entire portfolio of city buildings, with about 25% of the reduction being from energy efficiency. So more efficient lighting, more efficient air conditioning, and 26% reduction of the carbon use through putting solar PV on the rooftops. That project, because the city took the initiative to do that during COVID, it created economic activity, it created local jobs, reduced carbon by 182,000 tons, which is equivalent of 202,000 acres of forest. So it was really behind the scenes, while you have all of us really looking at government and government, trying to deal with the pandemic. They still had the wherewithal within the Department of Design and Construction to say, what other opportunities do we have to save money, save energy, create local jobs, and instead of just continuing to put that money and those jobs into the old tinker that comes along.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Now I'm wondering, with the lighting, to save money on lighting, is it changing from the old light bulb to LED lights, or what kind of lighting? I mean, just for people at home who might want to do the same thing with their own lights, how can they save money and be more energy efficient with their lights?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, so just a much better technology. So putting out the same level of light, but using 50 to 60% less energy just through that retrofit. And then on the city level, when you do that across over 70,000 light fixtures, it has a huge impact, or for your house. It really depends on how granular you get. So, the easiest thing is just to replace them all, because there's a lot of sort of just operational savings from not needing to replace them as often. So LEDs last, anywhere from 7 to 10 years. Really depends on how much the light's on. Older technologies, you're having to replace those light bulbs every 2 to 3 years. If you're just thinking about the economics, it's not, it's kind of like, well, if I have a closet light that I only turn on every once in a while, I may not be, and that LED light costs $20 and I make my money back. You could be really granular and just do the lights that you have on the most. But certainly from a sustainability standpoint and from a just operational standpoint, it's really nice to have everything kind of match. and kind of be the same color. LEDs, they got a bad reputation when they first came out because engineers were really making them super bright. Now there's a vast array of technology of colors, and your television's an LED light, so it can really be any color you want. And you can also add dimmability in controls, which is another. It's a energy saving thing to be able to dim it, but it's also just kind of nice, right? To be able to dim your lights down to the light level that you want.
Yeah. And how about using natural lighting as well? I guess that's something you can't do to buildings that are existing, but if buildings could be built allowing more natural light, at least during the day, because natural light is kind of better for you at the end of the day. It's, it doesn't disrupt your sleep cycle as much and everything. So I don't know if that's something that you guys have been thinking about when you're building new buildings, how natural light can be used more than artificial lighting.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And one of the keys to make that, so it's important to be very human centric, to be a healthy building, healthy planet, healthy people. Window tinting, which
yeah,
is
that's great.
the city took the initiative to do that across, I don't know, thousands, Gregory probably knows, thousands of square feet of window film. That allows you to have the natural light, but to block the heat that comes from the sun and some of the UV rays that are not too great for your skin or for your furniture. And it reduces the air conditioning load, right? When the air conditioning is a very energy part of a building or a house. So that's an excellent energy conservation measure that allows you to have so you can dim or completely turn off your lighting. You're saving energy in that way. You feel good about not having the blinds there, so the natural light comes through, but you're blocking the UV rays and the heat. And you're reducing the air conditioning load.
Yeah, no, that's great. And how about those lights that also turn automatically off? Suppose not in the main building, but maybe in a bathroom or something. Do you guys put in those kind of lights that shut off automatically?
Yeah, those sort of localized controls are, it's really important to make sure that you do things in a way that works well for the people in the building, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the whole point of trying to protect the planet. The planet's going to be just okay but we have to do these things that, without people. But we're here to make things human centric. So the old technology, it's like, especially if you're in a restroom and the lights all go off, right? We've all had that happen. That's all about getting the timer right. Right, getting the motion sensors right, all those things that you really dial in when you do a whole building energy audit. Before you look at the solar PV and the things on the roof, dialing in all those things and making it in a human centric way is an important step in the process.
Yeah, no, that's great. How about saving water? What kind of things did you look at to help the city and county save water? Were there any specific things you can do for the plumbing or anything?
Yeah, the city really led it in that way. So the city, wanted to save as much water as possible. It takes a lot of energy to pump water all around the island of Oahu or the island of Maui. It's also a precious resource. It also has to be treated. So there's a lot of energy and water are very connected. Thousands of fixtures are being replaced, high efficiency toilets, high efficiency faucets, in a project with the county of Maui, where they're also replacing the shower towers at the parks. Instead of just the one that turns on and full flows, has a nice button there, is a high efficiency shower. So in that project, about 87 million gallons of water being saved every year. That's a great point. And it's nice to have newer fixtures that have a longer life.
No, that's wonderful. I guess you talked about the police departments and the fire departments. Now I'm assuming with the fire departments, people are staying there and taking showers. They have 24-hour shifts. So that would make a huge impact to have more efficient shower heads.
Yeah, and solar hot water is
Yeah.
another great solution that most people do have on their homes, and that also applies to a fire station. And overall, a lot of these things are um, not really that hard to identify and figure out, but it's important for the energy dorks like me and Gregory to remember that, like especially like a fire station, their main job is, which is really important, is keeping us all safe and being there to respond for all kinds of things, not just fires. So, they need
Mhm.
they need support, right? They need people to come in and try to make that as painless as possible to get those energy savings. And then also, once the reduction's done, kind of my role, what I really like focusing on is what else can we do, which is solar PV and then battery storage, which can also be a resiliency measure, especially for first responders, police stations and fire stations. So one of the things that we looked at was another island community in Puerto Rico, where you have an emergency event like a long rain event or a hurricane, and you need your first responders to have resiliency. So some of the more advanced things that have come along with the ability to essentially create a small microgrid or keep, this applies to your
Mhm.
house or it applies to a fire station, keep that
Yeah.
on in those long-term island-wide power outages. When we looked at Puerto
Mhm.
Rico, the two main problems was communications. No one, I mean, we forget about it. I'm old enough that I remember, landlines, and your phone would still work when the power's out. Today, if we have an island-wide power outage, uh, you don't have a phone. No one has a phone within about 8 hours, and you can't communicate. So how are you able to respond and reconnect with your family? And how are first responders able to? Of course, they do have radios and other things like that.
Yeah.
But keeping the power on is an important part of being able to um, recover. And so in the County of Maui project, there's 12 resiliency hubs that are being put in. And that's where that additional step of resiliency has become an important part of sustainability. If you just have solar panels, in that inverter, that's really a computer, and it actually needs the grid. It needs the utility grid power to operate. In a power outage, it doesn't work. So even if there was a sales guy that said, "Hey, yeah, solar, you need the battery and you need the microgrid capability to stay on and create resiliency as part of that sustainability opportunity."
So do these buildings, fire department, police department, are they almost self-sufficient? I mean, I'm sure they're taking some energy from the grid as well, but I don't know how self-sufficient they might be.
Yeah, that's a
Any
really,
idea?
yeah, it's so one of the things that's happened with technology, that's technology, financing, and policy. That's the three-legged stool that you need to make this whole energy transition work. And instead of an approach where it's like, hey, we're going to go completely off grid, really what's happening with energy storage technology is it's becoming an asset for the utility company and the community to rely upon in a distributed way. A lot of this goes back literally to Nikolai Tesla and Thomas Edison, right? A centralized
Hmm.
approach versus the distributed approach. And the distributed approach is just more resilient. And so, part of the projects that we work in now in Hawaii is the utility through performance-based rate making, a relatively new. Hawaii is really leading in that area, and now has incentives to actually integrate not only their centralized power plant but also the buildings or your home. So the utility company can tap into that battery to maintain frequency on the grid and control it in a way when it's needed, which creates resiliency for the whole grid. So
Yeah.
that's something that's just happened in Hawaii over the last 4 or 5 years. That's really innovative, and that we're really leading the nation in. We've just started.
So, yeah, no, that's amazing. So can you tell us, Greg, about what recent projects you guys are working on right now?
Sure. Brody touched on the City and County of Honolulu project. And we started that in 2020 in the development stage, and then started construction in 2021. And it's pretty large scale. It's 92 city and county facilities, including city hall and fire headquarters, police headquarters, but all the stations, as Brody mentioned, ancillary buildings like community centers and golf courses, and the Neil Blaisdell Center was a huge component of it. The zoo.
Wow.
So it's really big scale. And you know what I reflected on when Brody was talking, and you mentioned it, Brody, but I want to iterate how custom and creative the solutions that Johnson Controls engineers are to accommodate the users and the occupants. Every single facility requires an engineered and custom solution. Can't just change all the light bulbs. It's how do the people work in there, or set the air conditioner at one temperature setting. It doesn't work that way, because different users need, like a jail wants the temperature at 60, but the offices want it at 72, and and then we have one chiller plant, so they have to have the zoning. And those kind of things. Or how about this? When we developed lighting plans and sensors pre-COVID, but then we go to install after COVID, and now there's plexiglass throughout the whole window and throughout the whole office, and the sensors don't work. So we're always modifying and accommodating the humans, and that's such a big part of our work.
How about, with, I had asked Brody before with the HEPA filters and just talking about COVID, how was there anything that you installed extra, like a HEPA filter or something, or, I don't know, extra room for windows that actually open to get some nice new circulation in instead of just recycling the old air that's in the building?
I'll take that one if it's okay. So, for instance, one of our facilities, the city and county of Honolulu Fosse building, there's 900 people that work in the building. It's 16 floors, and we're replacing all the air conditioning components. And as part of the system for the air conditioning, we're installing UV filtration to treat the air to kill pathogens, so that so that the air is pure and clean to breathe. And also on that fresh air topic. So yeah, the building doesn't have windows that open, but there is a statewide health and safety code that requires a certain percentage of all air that is distributed to be fresh outside air. So we're pulling in fresh outside air in all facilities and monitoring the levels of, say, carbon monoxide and other levels that are in the air. Those get monitored, and then we can control remotely and automatically the amount of fresh air that is taken in for people's health and safety.
That's great. It looks like we're out of time, so we have to wrap it up though. So thank you, Greg and Brody, for being on the show. We've been talking with Greg Robison and Brody McMurty from Johnson Controls, and sustainable infrastructure company, about the projects they've been doing in Honolulu. And thanks to our broadcast show engineer, Michael, and thanks to the folks at ThinkTech for hosting our show. And thanks to you, our listeners, of course, for listening. This is Dr. Grace O'Neil. Catch me in 2 weeks. We'll be talking with Wayne Tanaka of the Sierra Club about the projects they're doing in Hawaii. And I'll check you out then, and you will check me out as well. So thank you so much for listening. Aloha, everyone.
Thank you so much for watching ThinkTech Hawaii. If you like what we do, please like us and click the subscribe button on YouTube and the follow button on Vimeo. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and donate to us at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.